Hi guys, in this video we're going to be looking at a mock test from Sutton-in-Ashfield test centre. Now, as we start the video, we are on the driveway coming out of the test centre. Keep in mind that during the daytime you should stay out of the car park for the test centre so you don't interfere with anyone who's on their driving test. As we come up to the end of the driveway, make sure you keep the car nice and straight and get yourself all the way to those giveaway lines. That will keep you in the correct position and allow you to see around the signs on the end. You see the pupil does a really nice job here, not turning at all until she's crossing the giveaway line out onto the new road. If you do steer before this point, you're going to end up cutting the corner, and that could cost you on your test. Up ahead, you'll see signs for a railway crossing. When you're approaching this, you want to make sure you can keep the crossing itself clear, and you'll need to make sure that the other side of the crossing has room for you before you enter that yellow box. Anywhere with the yellow box means keep the area clear, don't go in until you can get out the other side. And of course, a railway crossing, absolutely essential. You don't want to be sat between those barriers if they start coming down. Coming up to the mini roundabout, we're going straight ahead, and you'll notice the markings here guide us into that right-hand lane. Notice on the far side as well, we've got a national speed limit sign and a queue of traffic. So you want to be keeping your eyes up for things like that to adapt your speed as you're coming in, looking for oncoming cars that are turning too. Be mindful as well that you do not need to signal if you're going straight ahead. Now, this pupil signaled right on the approach, which could imply she's going to make a U-turn. Now, if you mislead someone into stopping when they don't need to or going when they're not safe to, then of course that is going to count against you on your test. It puts you at risk afterwards as well, so just be mindful of that. Up ahead, coming through the roadworks, just be mindful of these lights. If they do change and you can stop safely, then you should, just like any other traffic light. And we, of course, are turning right. As we make the turn up ahead, you're going to see a change in speed again down to 30 miles an hour. We've also got the oncoming traffic queuing up because of the roadworks, so these can restrict your view, particularly big vehicles like this truck, and the examiners will expect you to adapt your speed if there's a risk of anything coming out behind that truck. For example, if there's a side road or if there's a path on the left, you may get people trying to cross the road as well. Now we're going to be taking the next left, and it is a very tight corner, so you need to bring your speed down quite a lot. This pupil came in a little bit fast, and as you can see, it pushed her out into the middle of the road as she made the turn. That's got to go down as a serious fault because the risk there is too high. If anything was coming the other way, then you've got the risk of a collision, and of course someone would have to react. So that could escalate to a dangerous fault very quickly. Asking the pupil to pull up on the left here, we're going to carry out an angle start. You'll do this on every driving test, and the examiners just want to see you pull up safely, checking your mirrors and signaling. And then, of course, when you're moving out, you're checking your mirrors, you're signaling, you're checking your blind spot, looking around over your right shoulder, and you're accounting for the traffic coming the other way as well, because you're going to be pulling out into the middle of the road. So just take your time with that one. The pupil did a really nice job there. Lots and lots of head movements, double checking over the shoulder too. As we're coming down this road with the parked cars either side, again, lots of mirror use as you're moving around. And that's just going to keep you safe if there's anything like motorbikes or e-bikes, which of course are a lot quieter and can still be very quick. If you're covering those mirrors, the examiner can see that you're aware of what's going on, and it's going to help you keep safe as well. Now, on top of that, you've got to keep your mind ahead and your speed low so you can deal with things like the oncoming car there. And you can spot things like the blind junction at the end where you can't see what's coming from the left or right and you have to give way. The pupil does a really nice job here bringing the car all the way to the give way so she can see around those hedges before deciding to pull out. And you want to keep in mind that the most common reason for failing the driving test has consistently been not making effective observations when dealing with junctions. So anywhere where your view is restricted, like a blind junction, you want to slow right down and make sure you can see before you cross that line. The end of the road, we're turning left. The pupil did put a signal on a little bit early here, and that could have convinced people she was turning into that side road just before. As I mentioned earlier at the mini roundabout, if you mislead other drivers at junctions, then it's going to be recorded as a driver fault initially. If it actually causes a problem, that could escalate into a serious or dangerous fault. So just be really mindful that your signals tell people what you actually mean to do. Following the road ahead, you'll see that the speed increases to 40 mile an hour just ahead. Now, even though the left-hand sign is a little bit hidden by the trees, the right-hand sign is pretty clear. So you'll want to be checking both sides of the road regularly for signs just in case. Just up ahead, we've got some traffic lights where we'll be turning right. Now, as we're approaching, you'll see the lights start to change. However, there is a separate filter light for vehicles turning right. So anytime you're approaching a traffic light junction, just double check those lights. Make sure that you are actually looking at the ones that apply to you, because junctions like this are very, very common around Sutton-in-Ashfield, and particularly along the A38, which is where we're heading next. Even if you're coming through a filter light like this, it's still worth watching out for oncoming traffic or vehicles behind it that may be in the wrong lane when they're trying to make the turn. Now, while the odds of that are quite low, it's still worth covering your back and keeping your eyes moving. And if you get into the habit of doing that, it will just be something you naturally do after you pass your test as well. So building good habits like that while you're learning to drive is really essential, and this is why your instructor will constantly go on about checking your mirrors, checking your blind spots, looking further ahead, and so on and so on and so on. Remember, your instructor is looking out for you in the sense that they don't want you to just pass your driving test. They want you to be safe and capable afterwards. Up ahead, you're going to see a direction sign telling us that we can either turn left or right at the end of the road. We're going to be taking a left turn, and this is traffic light controlled. And it's also got a separate set of lights for people turning left to those turning right. So again, you want to be making sure you're looking at the correct set of lights, not getting distracted by the lights that don't apply to you. As you're joining the queue at the traffic lights as well, make sure you leave plenty of room behind other vehicles. In this situation, I think the learner did leave a little bit too much room. However, it wasn't big enough to warrant a fault, in my opinion. I think any more than that, and I would have recorded a driver fault. While we're sat here, the pupil is scanning around frequently. She's not just staring at the traffic lights too. I know we can't see that on the camera, but it's essential to keep your eyes moving. If you're just staring at something, what can happen is you zone out and you end up not responding when those lights do change. So keep your eyes moving constantly. It's going to help you keep mentally focused. It's also going to help you keep aware of what's coming up behind you and other vehicles in the junction too. So you're already prepared for anything you need to do as you come into that junction. Now, as we make the turn, there are 2 lanes on this road. However, the signs tell us that these close in very quickly. So it's going to be important to keep those mirrors covered just in case anyone behind you is trying to get around you. Because if you spot them cars coming around you, you can respond to them much more effectively. If you're not aware of them until they're already coming around you, that's too late to react safely. Up ahead, we've got another set of traffic lights, and you can see the big diagram on the left there telling us it's a crossroad. We're going to be carrying on straight ahead at this one. So your normal position is staying in the left lane 1 unless you're overtaking or planning to turn right, of course. If you do end up in that second lane, it's not the end of the world. Cross the junction, check your mirrors, and bring it back into the left. Now, approaching traffic lights is something that I found learners really struggled with, and it's something that I see that even drivers struggle with sometimes too. So there's a really simple way of breaking it down. Now, I found that this worked with the majority of my pupils, so it's well worth a try. The idea is that when you're approaching the traffic lights, you don't want to be accelerating. If you just let go of the accelerator and put your toe over the brake but not pressing it, you're letting the car naturally slow down to give you more thinking time as you approach the traffic lights. Then you want to pick a point of no return. Now, this is the point where you are going to either commit to go or commit to stop. With that in mind, you can make the decision whether you're going to go back on the accelerator or whether you're going to start braking based on what the lights do as you're approaching your point of no return. So by doing this, what you've done is decided already what your limitations are for that junction. You've taken control of the situation rather than waiting for the lights to tell you what to do and then reacting to it, because reactive decisions like that are what makes driving uncomfortable and unpredictable. If you're making the decisions, it becomes predictable, it becomes planned out, and you become more confident about what you're doing as well. So if you are struggling with approaching traffic lights, give that a try. Pick a point of no return, let go of the accelerator, cover the brakes, and make the decision before the traffic lights make it for you. As we cross the junction, you'll see the lanes merge back into one, and this is an example of why forward planning and mirror use and awareness are so important when you're driving. If you know those lanes are merging, then you can plan how to merge in with the neighboring traffic. You can align yourself with a gap that allows everyone to slip in more comfortably. You can watch out for people who are going to try and push ahead of you and drop back and just let them get out the way. And you're going to keep yourself in control of that situation. If you just plow across that junction without checking what's going on, you're going to have to react to what other people do. That, of course, means that your driving becomes less steady, less controlled, and you become less confident because you're having to react to things that you're not ready for. Just a little further ahead, we're going to be turning right, and the pupil has had an early instruction from the Sat Nav to do this. This gives her plenty of time to check her mirrors, pop her signal on, and find a gap on that second lane to move over. Once she's in that second lane, moving into the filter lane is really simple. Again, don't forget the mirrors, check them, and signal in good time before you enter that filter lane. And just like I mentioned earlier about filter lights, just make sure that you're looking at the correct set that tell you what to do. And again, that you're scanning around frequently just to take in all the information you can to make the turn more safely. Now, if you're doing that, you'll have spotted that the oncoming traffic has a filter lane, allowing them to turn left into the road that we're turning right into. Now, you want to be very careful about this filter lane because the traffic lights do not control it. It instead has a giveaway line at the end. And if you remember, the most common reason that people fail the driving test and also the most common cause of collisions on the road is ineffective observations at junctions. Now, again, it comes down to scanning around and spotting that risk before it develops into a real problem. And if you're doing that, then you won't have any issues there. Along this road, we have a few parked cars, and when we're approaching these, you want to be checking your mirrors before you move out and checking them again before you move in. Now, I appreciate that's something you can't see on the camera, but the pupil is doing a really good job of checking those sides before she moves out and in. Now, as you're passing parked vehicles, you want to be mindful of people potentially opening the doors as you pass by as well. So ideally, you want to be moving out as you go around those cars to give enough room for that to happen. If you can't physically move out because of oncoming traffic or other restrictions, then you adapt your speed instead, either slowing yourself right down or even stopping completely and letting the oncoming traffic pass before you carry on around the parked car. Now, I want you to keep that in mind because shortly ahead, my pupil is going to receive a driver fault for getting too close to a parked car. As we're approaching the roundabout here, the pupil is doing a really good job of bringing the speed down and scanning around for anything from the right in particular. Even though the right has priority and the left should wait for you, do check that left side because if someone hasn't spotted you, they may pull out on you. Now, as I mentioned earlier, if you're looking out for these risks, you're more aware of those potential problems, then you're going to respond a lot more safely and more confidently when these problems come up. And the examiners will pick up on that, and it's going to look good on your driving test. So keep those eyes moving, look out for all the potential hazards that you can, and anything that you're not sure about, just bring your speed down and double check it's safe before you continue through. As we pass these parked cars, you'll notice that the pupil is keeping a steady space between all of them. However, the last car, you'll notice she leans in a little bit too early and gets a little bit closer to the front end of it. Now, whilst that's not risky enough to record as a serious fault, I am going to record a driver fault for that. This roundabout we're approaching now does catch a lot of people out because the direction that's given is to go straight ahead second exit. The road directly in front of us is actually that left turn first exit. So you'll see the pupil follows the edge of the roundabout and continues around to the second exit. She's done the correct thing and kept the car all the way to the left-hand edge as she's done that. She's covering the right mirror as well, just to see who's coming with her, which is absolutely spot on. Now, if you end up on the right-hand lane, that is not an issue in itself, as long as you stay in the right-hand lane and then change safely using your mirrors and signals after you leave the bend. Another set of traffic lights, and up ahead you'll see that the lanes merge in very quickly. So again, that mirror use as you're crossing, just being aware of who's coming with you and picking a safe opportunity to merge in with them is absolutely essential. So remember, you planning ahead and showing that awareness to the examiner is going to look good on your driving test, because it shows that you can look after yourself out on the road. Up ahead, you'll see the golden arches and a roundabout where the pupil is going to be turning right, third exit. However, as we approach, you'll notice the pupil lines up in the middle lane, which says straight ahead. If you find yourself in a wrong position, go where that position takes you. So she should have left at the second exit. Instead, she continued around to the third exit from the lane that said straight ahead. So it's got to go as a serious fault, unfortunately. When this was discussed in the debrief after the girls' mock test, she didn't even realize that she'd got in the wrong lane. And this just shows how easy a small lapse in concentration can cost you your test. You've got to keep yourself fully engaged throughout your driving test. Just up ahead, there's a lot that happens in a very small space of time. So I've asked the pupil to find a safe place to pull over on the left. Mirrors and signal was spot on. She was a little bit too close to this parked car as she came in, but other than that, the pullover was absolutely spot on, and a really nice decision of where to stop as well, keeping the driveways absolutely clear. When it came to moving off, she was very aware of what was going on around her, checking her blind spot effectively, but unfortunately, she left her left signal on as she pulled away. Because there's no other cars around except the one that just passed us, I'm only going to record a driver fault on this occasion. We're then taking a left turn, and if you notice, there's a giveaway line here, so you want to be looking for cars from your right, like that grey Audi, and be prepared to give way to them. So really important to look up into that new road and look out for markings or signs that give you instructions like that. As we come to the end of this road, we're turning right, and you'll want to watch out for two key elements here. The first one is your position, and the second one is your visibility. So notice how the pupil's leant over to the right and lined up with the giveaway line. She's also stopped completely, and it's not just because we've got cars on the left. To the right of us, we've got the hedges and stone wall, which they really do limit your view. So just like we said earlier about blind junctions, you want to make sure you can see what's coming before you cross that giveaway line into the new road. Now the van here creates a huge visual barrier, and the pupil does the right thing, checking her mirrors and slowing down, which pays off really nicely with the black car pulling out on the other side of it. Coming up to the end of the road, turning left, and again to the right, the view is very poor. So as you're leaning into that left turn, just want to make sure you're slow enough to see what's coming before you cross that giveaway line. Now, I've found that with left turns, one of the most common things people forget to do is actually look where they're going, because they're so busy looking to the right to see what's coming in the first place. If you're not looking into that new road, then you don't know what you're pulling into, regardless of what's coming from your right-hand side. So make sure that on left turns especially, you're looking to the left as well as the right. One of the phrases I used to use with my pupils quite frequently was to look where you're going and glance for gaps. So on left turns, look to the left more often than not and glance to the right for the opportunity to go. This way you keep yourself focused on what you're actually doing, and you're still checking that it's safe to pull out. Just a little further ahead, our lane is going to split into two lanes. If the examiners want you to take a right turn, they will usually tell you quite early on. We're going to be turning left, so it's not an issue, but if you are going to need to change lanes, make sure you check your mirrors and signal before you do it. As we approach the end of the road to turn left, you'll notice it's a traffic light junction. Now, when we're turning through a traffic light junction, a green light only means that you can go if it's safe to go. So you've got to make sure you're looking around effectively and making sure that you're safe to go when those lights change. Now, this is why it's so helpful to keep your eyes moving while you're sat at the red light, because you can take in any information nice and early, such as pedestrians who are looking to cross the road, or vehicles that may want to change lane because they're in the wrong lane. For example, this taxi in the right hand lane may change their mind and want to turn left. If you're just staring at the traffic light on the left side, you are not going to see their indicator come on, because you're going to be tunnel vision focused on that traffic light. So keep your eyes moving, keep scanning around. Pedestrians especially are a really high risk around these crossings, because some of them will just dart out thinking they can sneak across the gaps in the traffic. And that, of course, creates problems for us when we're driving through, particularly learners who may be a bit more nervous and a bit more reactive to people doing that. So spotting them early reduces the chance of you reacting to them, and helps you plan and respond more safely and more effectively, and helps you feel more confident in dealing with those situations too. Just up ahead, we've got a mini roundabout where we'll be going straight ahead second exit according to my sat nav. However, I prefer to address this as a right turn, and would expect a pupil to put a right signal on and check the right mirrors before making the turn. And just up ahead, we're going to be turning right again. So we'll be looking for gaps in the oncoming traffic. Don't forget your mirrors and signals, and looking up into that new road so you know exactly what you're going into. Again, the pupil does a really nice job of that. She's looking well ahead, spots the pedestrian nice and early, but more importantly, spots that the road is clear, that there's no oncoming cars, and that allows her to keep moving. If you're driving into a road like this, you need to see that you've got somewhere to go before you make the turn. If that road was busy, you would wait before the turn and make sure you've got a safe place before turning in. And while you continue along roads like this, you should be looking as well for gaps in the traffic where you could pull in, or where oncoming vehicles could pull over and let you pass. If you spot these gaps nice and early, you can make decisions nice and early and keep control of that situation, keeping you feeling confident too. Now, on the other side of that, if you're coming down roads like this and you're not prepared for that, you're not planning for an oncoming vehicle, then you're going to panic react when someone does come into that road and end up dipping into gaps that just are not suitable. So it's not just a case of keeping your eyes up ahead, it's keeping your mind up ahead as well, and being prepared for those potential risks. Now, another example is here where we'll be following the road to the left. It is a very sharp corner. We don't know what's around there, so the pupil does the right thing here by slowing right down, making sure she can see a safe gap before letting the car pick its speed up again. So something that is not visible on the camera, of course, is the pupil has the brakes covered as she's approaching situations like that. And the same's true as we come up to this giveaway here. You cannot see to the left or right until you get to the end of the road. So you want your toe over the brake. You want to be prepared to stop, making sure you can see before you pull out. Again, another blind junction, toe over the brake. I'm going to stop till I find a gap. And that's the way you should think of it. I am going to stop until I've got a gap. Another one at the end of this road where, again, the buildings cause such a visual barrier that you cannot just pull out. You've got to bring the car to a complete stop and make sure you can see both directions before you pull out into the new road. Now, that's especially true when you see the cars on the right, because they block the view so much more, and the pupil has to creep out into the road to see a little bit more before she can fully commit to pulling into that new road. Up ahead, I've asked this pupil to pull up alongside the next parked car in order to carry out her maneuver, and a lot of pupils get really flustered when they hear that they're going to be doing this maneuver, the parallel park. If you don't feel confident with a maneuver, then spend more time practicing to the point that you do feel confident doing that maneuver, because otherwise, if you get that on your test, you are going to flounder and you're going to panic. The main thing when it comes to doing maneuvers is keep the car slow, keep looking around over your shoulders especially, and keep your mind focused on where you want the car to finish. Whilst I'm not a big fan of using reference points to do a kind of point-by-point maneuver, they can be helpful as a framework, but if you're dependent on them, when you get into your own car after passing your test, those reference points are not going to work. So you want to make sure that you can adapt that maneuver to your own car. And of course, this means practicing your judgment skills, not just relying solely on those point-by-point systems that you're given by some instructors. After this maneuver, when you're moving away, don't forget your blind spot checks, your signals, make sure it's safe, and take your time as you move out. You also want to be considering oncoming traffic, and if you're not certain that there's enough room to get around that parked car without interfering with any oncoming cars, then just wait until they've passed by. Don't feel you've got to rush to get yourself moving again. Just up ahead, we've got another crossroad, which is another blind junction. So you want to make sure you're bringing the car down to almost a complete stop, allowing yourself time to see around those corners effectively before you cross into that junction. Again, this pupil does a really nice job here. Just ahead, you can see the tight bend as well. We want to be mindful of oncoming cars. So again, a very, very low speed is essential when you're coming around roads like this. Don't feel that you've got to pick up the speed just because it's a 30 mile an hour limit. It's a case of adapting your speed within the limit to make sure you're safe. At the end of this road, we're going to be turning right, and you'll notice to the left is the end of this road, and the road crossing it is quite a busy one, so you get quite a lot of cars coming in from your left-hand side. Again, it's a case of take your time and make sure you're looking effectively, finding a safe opportunity to pull out into that road. You don't want to feel like you've got to rush through these junctions. It's not a race to get to the end of the test route. It's all about demonstrating to that examiner that you are safe and that you can keep the car under control and keep yourself calm and make good decisions. Up ahead, we've got a few parked cars. Any situation like this, you want to be looking for oncoming vehicles and just making a judgment as to whether you can fit safely or whether you need to slow down and let them pass first. The alternative, of course, is they'll slow down and let you pass, but with learner signs on the car, that's the less likely. So just be mindful of that one while you're out on your driving test as well. Coming around the bend, not a great view with that building on the corner, but the road is nice and clear. Again, we want to see good mirror use, a little dip in speed when you're approaching situations like that. And then, of course, when you can see it's safe, pick that speed up again. Up ahead, we've got a set of traffic lights where we'll be carrying straight on, then turning right into the test centre driveway. As we come up to the traffic lights, you'll notice that there are two lanes and the pupil is lined up on the left, which is absolutely fine in this situation because these two lanes are going to merge together before we make the right turn back into the test centre. As before, I want to see lots of eye movement in this situation. Don't fixate on the traffic lights and don't get too close to the car in front. As you can see here, the pupil leaves a nice gap between us and the other learner in front. And particularly with learners, if you're getting right up to the back of them, it can come across quite intimidating for them. And we don't want to put anyone, particularly other learners, under any unnecessary sense of pressure. You can feel it yourself when you're learning to drive. If someone's behind you, there's that sense of urgency that you've got to keep moving to keep out of their way. So try not to put that on anyone else as well. As we come into the test centre driveway, that brings us to the end of this mock test, and unfortunately it is not a pass for this pupil. Now it comes down to the two serious faults. The first being the tight left turn where the pupil came in too fast and ended up in the middle of the road. and the second being turning right at the roundabout from the lane that said straight ahead only. So I hope you found this video helpful in preparing for your own driving test. If you have, please do say so in the comments. Please like, share and subscribe too, and I will try and get some more videos up in the near future. Thank you again for watching, and God bless.